The morning sun cast a golden glow over the small village as birds chirped in the distance. It was the first day of the new school term, and students bustled around, laughing and chatting as they entered the grand private school. Among them was a boy named Hassan, his clothes simple but neat, his books tightly held in his arms. He wasn't like the other students. His father was a farmer, and unlike the children of wealthy businessmen and politicians who attended this prestigious school, he came from a humble background. Hassan had always been a bright student. He worked hard, listened attentively in class, and never caused trouble. But today, as he stepped into his classroom, a sense of unease washed over him. The teacher, Mr. Rashid, stood at the front, his sharp eyes scanning the students. He was known for favoring the rich and powerful while looking down on those who couldn't afford luxury. As Hassan settled into his seat, Mr. Rashid's voice rang out. Stand up. Confused, Hassan rose to his feet, gripping the edge of his desk. The other students turned to look at him, some whispering, others smirking. I checked the records last night, Mr. Rashid continued, folding his arms. It seems like there's been a mistake. A student like you doesn't belong here. Hassan's heart pounded. Sir, I don't understand. Pass the entrance test. My fees are paid. The teacher sneered. Fees? Do you think this school is just about fees? Look around you. These students belong to families that can actually contribute to society. Your father, what does he do? Works in the fields, doesn't he? Hassan's hands clenched into fists. He felt the weight of all the eyes in the room. My father is an honest man. He works hard to feed people. Mr. Rashid scoffed. Hard work doesn't make you fit for this school. You lack class. You lack status. You are, how do I say it nicely? Not one of us. He picked up a file from his desk and threw it onto the table. Pack your things. You're expelled. Gasps filled the room. Some students looked at Hassan with pity, others with amusement. Hassan's throat tightened, but he refused to let his tears fall. This isn't fair, he said, his voice trembling. I've done nothing wrong. Life isn't fair, Mr. Rashid said coldly. Now leave before I call security. With shaking hands, Hassan gathered his books and walked toward the door. As he stepped out, he heard laughter behind him, whispers of mockery. His head hung low, shame burning inside him. That evening, he sat in his small home, staring at his books. His father noticed the sadness in his eyes. What happened, son? Hassan hesitated before telling him everything. His father's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. But instead of anger, he sighed and placed a hand on Hassan's shoulder. Don't worry, son. People judge by wealth, but real worth isn't in money. We'll figure something out. Hassan nodded, but deep down he felt defeated. He had worked so hard, yet it took just one man's prejudice to destroy his dreams. The next morning, the school was buzzing as students arrived. Everything seemed normal, until a loud noise roared from the sky. Heads turned. Teachers and students rushed to the windows. A helicopter was descending onto the school's vast playground. The wind from its blades sent dust flying as it landed gracefully. Teachers murmured in confusion. The principal hurried outside, followed by a crowd of students. The door of the helicopter opened, and an elderly man in an expensive suit stepped out. His presence commanded attention, his sharp eyes scanning the school building. Mr. Rashid's face paled as he recognized him. The man removed his sunglasses, his voice calm yet powerful. Where is my grandson? The entire school fell silent. The crowd outside the school grew, whispers spreading like wildfire. Students exchanged glances, teachers stood frozen, and even the principal, a man known for his strict authority, seemed unsure of what to do. The elderly man's eyes scanned the gathering, his expression unreadable. The air was thick with tension. Mr. Rashid swallowed hard, stepping forward hesitantly. Sir, may I ask who you're looking for? The man's sharp gaze turned toward him. I just asked that, didn't I? Where is my grandson? His voice was calm but carried an unmistakable weight, the kind that made people listen. The principal finally found his voice. Sir, with all due respect, who is your grandson? The old man removed his glasses, his piercing eyes locking onto Mr. Rashid. Listen. Where is Hassan? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Students turned to one another, eyes wide with shock. Mr. Rashid's face drained of color, and he took an unsteady step back. Hassan, he repeated, as if hoping he had misheard. The old man nodded. Yes, son. My grandson. For a moment no one spoke. The weight of those words sank in. Just yesterday, Hassan had been humiliated and expelled for being the son of a farmer. And now, standing in front of them, was a man whose presence alone demanded respect. Someone clearly powerful, someone clearly wealthy. The principal forced a smile. Sir, there must be some misunderstanding. Well, he left yesterday. The old man's eyes darkened. I know, he said simply. I also know why. His gaze shifted back to Mr. Rashid. You expelled him, didn't you? Mr. Rashid struggled to find words. I didn't know. You didn't know what? The old man's voice was still calm, but now there was something else in it, something dangerous. That he had family. That he wasn't alone. The crowd watched in silence. No one dared to speak. Even the students who had laughed at Hassan the previous day now felt uneasy. Mr. Rashid opened his mouth, but the old man continued. Tell me, he said, stepping closer, what was the reason you expelled my grandson? The teacher's throat went dry. I was following school policy, he stammered. You thought, the old man interrupted, that because his father is a farmer, he doesn't belong here? Mr. Rashid's eyes darted toward the principal, silently pleading for support. But the principal remained silent, sweat forming on his brow. The old man let out a slow breath. You see, that's the problem with people like you, he said. You judge by appearances. You assume worth is measured by money. He looked around at the students, his gaze sweeping across them. How many of you believe that? His voice echoed in the silence. No one answered. Some students lowered their heads. Others shuffled uncomfortably. The old man turned back to Mr. Rashid. Do you know who I am? The teacher swallowed hard and nodded. Of course he knew now. This man was not just anyone. He was Malik Saeed, a name that carried immense weight in the city, a businessman with influence far beyond what the school could imagine. Malik Saeed sighed. I built my empire from nothing. I worked hard just like my son did after me. And now, my grandson is being punished for that hard work. Mr. Rashid opened his mouth again, but the old man raised a hand, silencing him. Do you know why I sent Hassan to this school? The teacher shook his head weakly. I sent him here, Malik Saeed continued, because I wanted him to grow up among different people. I wanted him to see how the world works, to learn. But I also wanted to see how the world would treat him when they didn't know his last name. He let the words sink in. And you? His eyes bore into Mr. Rashid's. Failed that test. The silence that followed was deafening. The weight of Malik Saeed's words pressed down on everyone. Even the students who had mocked Hassan the previous day felt a twinge of shame. A black car pulled up near the helicopter, and the door opened. Hassan stepped out hesitantly, his eyes darting between his grandfather and the crowd of students. His father followed closely behind, his face unreadable. A hushed whisper spread through the students. Some looked shocked. Others looked guilty. Hassan hesitated before walking toward his grandfather. Malik Saeed smiled faintly and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Tell me, Hassan, he said gently, do you want to stay in this school? Hassan hesitated, looking at the faces around him. Some of the same students who had mocked him now looked at him differently. The teacher who had expelled him stood frozen, fear in his eyes. He could feel all of them waiting for his answer. His heart was pounding. He had dreamed of studying here, had worked hard for it. But after what had happened, after everything he had felt, was this still the place for him? Hassan swallowed and looked up at his grandfather, searching for an answer. And in that moment he realized, this wasn't just his decision. This was something bigger. This was about more than just one boy in one school. But what would he choose? Hassan looked around, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence felt heavy, as if the whole school was holding its breath, waiting for his answer. His fingers clenched at his sides, and for the first time, he truly saw the faces around him, not just as classmates, but as people who had judged him before knowing him. Some were still in shock, some looked guilty, and a few averted their eyes, as if ashamed of how they had treated him. His grandfather's firm but kind gaze rested on him, waiting patiently. Hassan felt a lump in his throat. This school had been his dream. He had studied hard, passed the entrance test, and believed that if he worked with dedication, nothing else would matter. But it did matter. People like Mr. Rashid had made it matter. Hassan's father, standing a few steps away, remained silent. His weathered hands, rough from years of working in the fields, were clenched into fists. He had always taught Hassan that dignity came from hard work, that no profession was greater or lesser than another. But here, in this place, those values had been crushed under the weight of prejudice. Hassan's gaze flickered toward Mr. Rashid, who still looked shaken. The teacher's arrogance had disappeared, replaced by fear. The same man who had humiliated him yesterday now seemed powerless. The principal stood rigid, unsure of what to say or do. Hassan turned back to his grandfather. His voice came out quiet but steady. "I want to study, Dada Abu," he said. "But I don't want to be where I'm not respected." A hush fell over the students. Hassan's words weren't just an answer. They were a statement, one that cut deeper than any argument. His grandfather nodded slowly, as if he had expected this. A soft smile played on his lips, but his eyes carried something deeper, pride. "You've made your choice, and I will stand by it." He looked at the principal. "This school failed my grandson, not the other way around." The principal opened his mouth, but no words came out. Mr. Rashid finally found his voice. "Sir, please. I didn't know." Malik Saeed turned to him, his expression unreadable. "You didn't know. Or you didn't care to know." His voice was calm, yet each word carried weight. "How many other students have you treated like this?" Mr. Rashid looked down, shame creeping onto his face. The students watched in silence, some realizing for the first time that Hassan's expulsion had been more than just an unfortunate event. It had exposed a hidden truth about their school. Just then, a boy from the back of the crowd hesitantly stepped forward. It was Bilal, one of the students who had been in Hassan's class. He looked nervous, but something in his expression was different, like he had finally found the courage to speak. "Sir." Bilal's voice was quiet, but in the silence it carried. "This isn't the first time." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Mr. Rashid stiffened. The principal shot Bilal a warning glance, but the boy didn't back down. He looked at Hassan, then at Malik Saeed. Other students. Some of them left quietly. Some weren't expelled, but they were treated badly until they left on their own. He hesitated. "And I never said anything." Hassan stared at him, surprised. He had never spoken much to Bilal before. In fact, Bilal had been one of the students who had laughed when he was expelled. But now there was regret in his eyes. The confession sent a ripple through the crowd. Other students exchanged uneasy glances. A few nodded, as if silently agreeing with Bilal. Malik Saeed's gaze didn't waver. "And why are you saying something now?" Bilal swallowed. "Because I see it now," he admitted. "Yesterday I laughed. I didn't think about how unfair it was. But today, seeing you here, seeing Hassan," he lowered his head, "I realized I was wrong." Hassan felt a strange mix of emotions. He wasn't sure if Bilal's words made him feel better or worse. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about him anymore. Malik Saeed turned to the principal. "What do you have to say about this?" The principal cleared his throat, clearly flustered. "Sir, I assure you we will conduct an investigation. If there has been any mistreatment, we will take appropriate action." A bitter smile crossed Malik Saeed's lips. "An investigation?" He shook his head. "This is not about a single mistake. This is about a mindset. One that has been allowed to grow here." The principal's face darkened, but he didn't argue. He knew he had no defense. Ehsan's father, who had been silent all this time, finally stepped forward. "I sent my son here because I believed in this school," he said, his voice steady. "I thought education was the great equalizer, that if he studied hard, he would be treated the same as any other student." He looked around at the teachers and students. "But I was wrong." His eyes landed on Ehsan. "And I won't let my son stay where he is not valued." Ehsan felt his chest tighten. He had spent so much time wanting to fit in, wanting to prove himself. But now he saw the truth. He had nothing to prove. His grandfather placed a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go." Ehsan nodded. But just as they turned toward the helicopter, a voice called out, "Wait!" Everyone turned. It was Bilal again. He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Listen, I know I can't change what happened. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I don't want you to leave like this." Ehsan studied him. The boy who had once ignored him, who had once laughed at him, was now looking at him with something else in his eyes. Regret, but also respect. Bilal wasn't the only one. Other students were shifting uncomfortably, as if realizing that something important was slipping through their fingers. Some of them looked ashamed. Ehsan's heart twisted. He had dreamed of making friends here, of being seen as equal. Now, after everything, they finally saw him. But was it too late? His grandfather's hand tightened on his shoulder. "The choice is still yours, Ehsan." Ehsan looked at the school, at the students who had once ignored him, at the teacher who had thrown him out without a second thought. And then he looked at his family, the people who had always stood by him. The whole school was waiting for his answer. But Ehsan himself wasn't sure what it would be. Ehsan stood frozen, his mind spinning. Every pair of eyes was locked on him, waiting for his answer. The same students who had laughed at him yesterday now looked at him with uncertainty, some with guilt, others with something close to admiration. Even Bilal, who had been part of the teasing, had spoken up. But was that enough? Could he really stay in a place where he had been humiliated so easily? His grandfather's hand rested firmly on his shoulder, steadying him, reminding him that he had a choice. Ehsan's father stood beside him, silent but strong, his expression unreadable. The school he had once thought of as a place of opportunity now felt different. He had believed that his hard work would be enough to earn respect, but respect, it seemed, had never been about effort to people like Mr. Rashid. Ehsan turned to look at his teacher. Mr. Rashid avoided his gaze, shifting uncomfortably. The arrogance from the day before was gone, replaced by something else, fear. He knew he had made a mistake, and now that mistake had come back to haunt him. The principal cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Ehsan," he said carefully, choosing his words, "we understand that mistakes were made. If you choose to stay, we will ensure that you are treated fairly." His voice was formal, but there was something forced about it. He wasn't offering kindness. He was offering damage control. Ehsan narrowed his eyes. If his grandfather hadn't shown up today, would the principal have ever admitted there was a mistake? Would anyone here have spoken up? Or would things have simply continued as they always had? Before Ehsan could answer, another voice cut through the tension. "Sir, what about Mr. Rashid?" Gasps echoed through the crowd as another student spoke up. This time it wasn't Bilal. It was a girl from the front row. Her voice steady despite the weight of her question. "If Ehsan stays, what happens to the teacher who expelled him for no reason?" A fresh wave of whispers spread. The question had struck at the heart of the matter. The students weren't just waiting to see if Hassan would stay. They wanted to see if anything would change. Mr. Rashid looked panicked. I was just following school policy, he stammered, his voice weak. I didn't. Was it school policy to throw a student out for something as small as being a farmer's son? Malik Saeed interrupted, his voice calm but cutting. Or was it just your own prejudice? The question hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The principal looked flustered. We will look into this matter. Will you? Malik Saeed asked, his eyes sharp. Or will you let it pass once my grandson leaves? The tension thickened. The students were no longer just spectators. They were realizing that this moment wasn't just about Hassan. It was about all of them. How many of them had seen unfairness and stayed silent? How many had been part of the problem without realizing it? Bilal looked at Hassan again. If you leave, nothing will change. His voice was quiet, but the truth in it was loud. Hassan swallowed. He had wanted to walk away, to escape this place and never look back. But Bilal was right. If he left, the school would go back to the way it was. No one would question the next time a student was mistreated. But if he stayed, his heartbeat quickened. He had spent so much time believing he didn't have power, that he was just one boy, that his father's profession meant he would always be looked down upon. But now, for the first time, he saw the truth. He had a voice. He had people listening. He turned to his grandfather. Dad Abu, he said, his voice steady. If I stay, I don't want to just stay. He looked at the principal. I want things to change. His words sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the crowd. Some of the students looked shocked. Others looked intrigued. Hassan could see the question forming in their minds. Could things actually change? Malik Saeed studied his grandson for a long moment. Then slowly, a proud smile crossed his face. Tell them what you want, Hassan. Hassan took a deep breath and turned back to the principal, to Mr. Rashid, to the entire school. His voice was clear and strong. I'll stay, he said. But not if things stay the same. The tension in the air was like a stretched wire, ready to snap. Hassan could see the fear in the eyes of those who had power here. They had expected him to leave, to let things return to normal. But he wasn't going to make it easy for them. The principal forced a smile. Oh, of course, Hassan. We'll ensure fairness. That's not enough, Hassan said firmly. If this school truly believes in fairness, it should prove it. The students held their breath. Mr. Rashid paled. The principal hesitated. And how do you suggest we do that? Hassan's hands curled into fists. This was his moment, his chance. An official policy, he said. One that protects every student, no matter where they come from. His eyes met the principal's. And an apology. A real one. The silence was deafening. The principal glanced at Malik Saeed, clearly realizing he had no way out. Mr. Rashid shifted nervously. Aye. Hassan waited. The teacher swallowed. His face was pale, his confidence shattered. He looked at Hassan, then at the students watching him. The weight of the moment was crushing. And then, finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said it. I'm sorry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. But it was real. Hassan didn't smile. He didn't need to. He had won something bigger than just a fight. He had won the right to be seen. But it wasn't over yet. Because now, the real question remained. Would the school actually change? Or was this just words? And Hassan wasn't leaving until he found out. The air felt heavy, as if the entire school was holding its breath. Hassan could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had stood up for himself, demanded change, and even forced an apology from the very teacher who had once dismissed him so easily. But something still didn't feel right. Mr. Rashid's apology had been quiet, almost forced. The principal had agreed to fairness, but there was no real commitment in his voice. The students were watching, waiting, but Hassan knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. Actions had to follow. And he wasn't sure if this school was ready for real change. Before he could speak again, a sudden commotion near the entrance made everyone turn. A security guard rushed toward the principal, whispering something urgently in his ear. The principal's face stiffened, and his eyes darted toward Malik Saeed. Ehsan's grandfather didn't move, his expression calm yet unreadable. But Ehsan noticed the way his father's posture shifted, as if bracing for something. Then the principal cleared his throat and turned back to the crowd. "Students, I believe we have had a productive discussion today," he said, his voice trying to maintain control. "But we should now return to our classes." Ehsan frowned. Something was off. The principal was trying to dismiss them too quickly, too suddenly. "I'm not finished," Ehsan said firmly, making sure his voice carried across the courtyard. The principal hesitated. "Ehsan, we appreciate your concerns. Rest assured, we will take appropriate measures." The school gates swung open with force, cutting his words short. A sleek black car pulled into the courtyard, its engine humming with quiet power. The murmurs among the students grew louder as they recognized the vehicle. Ehsan felt his stomach tighten. He knew that car. He had seen it before, on the rare occasions when the most powerful people in the city made appearances at events or when important government officials visited. The car door opened and a man stepped out, dressed in an impeccably tailored suit. His presence commanded immediate attention. The students fell into hushed whispers. Even the teachers shifted uncomfortably. The man's eyes scanned the scene before settling on Ehsan's grandfather. A small, knowing smile tugged at his lips as he approached. "Malik Saeed," the man greeted, his voice smooth yet laced with authority. "It's been a long time." Ehsan's grandfather didn't smile back. "Not long enough," he replied, his tone neutral but firm. Ehsan looked between them, confusion growing. Who was this man? And why did it feel like his presence had shifted the entire balance of power in the school? The principal quickly stepped forward, his voice nervous. "Mr. Asif, we weren't expecting you." Mr. Asif. The name clicked in Ehsan's mind almost instantly. This wasn't just anyone. He was a high-ranking official, someone who had influence not just in the city but far beyond. Ehsan glanced at his father, whose jaw was clenched tight. Mr. Asif turned to Ehsan now, studying him for a long moment before speaking. "You must be the boy at the center of all this," he said, his tone almost amused. "I've heard quite a bit about you today." Ehsan straightened his shoulders. "And who told you?" Mr. Asif's smile didn't falter. "That doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is that this situation seems to have caused quite a stir." He turned to the principal. "Would you care to explain why Malik Saeed had to personally step in over an issue in your school?" The principal's face turned pale. "Sir, it was a misunderstanding. We deeply respect all students and—" "Enough." Mr. Asif's tone sharpened, and the principal instantly fell silent. Son watched, heart pounding. What was going on? Why did Mr. Asif care about this situation? And why did his presence make even the principal look powerless? Then, the man turned back to Ehsan's grandfather. "You made quite the statement today, Malik Saeed." His grandfather didn't react. "I did what was necessary." Mr. Asif nodded, then glanced at Ehsan again. "Your grandson is sharp, brave. He reminds me of someone." Ehsan wasn't sure if that was a compliment or something else. Then Mr. Asif's expression darkened slightly. "But tell me, Malik Saeed, are you sure you want to go down this path?" Silence. Ehsan stiffened. What did that mean? His grandfather didn't flinch. "Are you threatening me, Asif?" A few students gasped at the bluntness of the words. Even the teachers looked alarmed. Mr. Asif chuckled softly, shaking his head. "A threat? No, of course not. But you know as well as I do that pushing too hard can make things difficult." His gaze flickered back to the principal. "For everyone." Ehsan clenched his fists. He understood now. Mr. Asif wasn't just here to observe. He was here to maintain control. to remind everyone that change wasn't something that came easily, especially not when powerful people had a stake in keeping things the same. The principal nodded quickly. "We will, of course, handle things appropriately." Ehsan looked at his grandfather, searching his face for any sign of hesitation. But there was none. Then, his grandfather did something Ehsan didn't expect. He took a step forward, standing toe-to-toe with Mr. Asif. Despite the difference in their clothing, one in a crisp suit, the other in a simple shalwar kameez, Ehsan had never seen his grandfather look more powerful. "You can remind them of their place, Asif," Malik Saeed said, his voice calm. "But don't forget mine." The tension in the air was suffocating. Even Mr. Asif's smile faltered slightly, as if realizing that he wasn't going to intimidate Malik Saeed as easily as others. Ehsan felt something shift in that moment. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was bigger. But before anyone could say another word, a loud buzzing sound broke the silence. Ehsan turned sharply. The sound was coming from the school's announcement speakers. But instead of the usual school bell or announcements, a voice echoed through the system, one that wasn't supposed to be there. A shaky but determined voice. "This school has hidden the truth for too long," the voice said. "And today that changes." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The principal spun toward the office building. "Who is that? Who turned on the system?" Ehsan's pulse raced. Someone was hijacking the school's speaker system. And then the voice continued. "I have proof of everything," it said. "And I'm about to show it to everyone." Ehsan's breath caught. Proof? Of what? And before he could react, the large digital screen near the assembly area flickered to life. Something big was about to be revealed. And Ehsan had no idea what it was. The entire school courtyard stood frozen as the screen flickered to life. Ehsan could feel his heartbeat hammering in his chest. Who had taken over the school's speaker system? And what proof were they talking about? The principal rushed toward the office building, barking orders at the staff. "Shut it down. Cut the feed." But it was too late. The screen stabilized, and a grainy video began playing. The students leaned forward, straining to see. The footage was from the school's own security cameras. It showed the day before, Ehsan standing in front of Mr. Rashid's desk, his hands gripping the straps of his backpack. The entire class had already seen this moment unfold, but now it was being played back for everyone. Ehsan's voice echoed through the speakers. "Sir, I didn't do anything wrong." And then the moment of truth. Mr. Rashid's response. "You don't belong here, boy. This school isn't for people like you." Gasps filled the courtyard. Students turned to look at Mr. Rashid, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. His exact words, his tone, the cruelty in his voice. It was all there, undeniable. Mr. Rashid's face turned pale. This is taken out of context," he stammered. It's fake." But the video wasn't done. Another clip played, this time from a different angle. It was from the staff room. Mr. Rashid was speaking to another teacher, unaware that a security camera had picked up their conversation. "That boy doesn't deserve to be here," he had said, laughing. "His father plows fields. What future does he think he'll have?" The murmurs turned into full-fledged outrage. Ehsan stared at the screen, his fists clenched. He had known the truth all along, but hearing it like this, seeing how easily Mr. Rashid had dismissed him, how casually he had spoken, made the anger rise in his chest. The principal's face was white as a sheet. He turned to Mr. Rashid, his voice shaking. "Is this true?" Mr. Rashid stammered, searching for words. This is." Before he could finish, another voice rang out from the back of the crowd. "There's more." Everyone turned. A girl stepped forward, holding up her phone. It was the same girl who had first questioned Mr. Rashid earlier. She looked nervous, but her grip on the phone was firm. "I found these emails in the school system," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. Mr. Rashid had been telling the administration to get rid of students from lower-income backgrounds for months. The principal snatched the phone, scrolling through the messages. His hands trembled. This can't be, he whispered. But it was. It was all there in writing. Son felt his breath hitch. He had come to school that morning expecting to prove his worth. He had never imagined the entire system would unravel before his eyes. Mr. Osif, who had been watching quietly, finally spoke. "Well," he said, his voice unreadable. "It seems this school has some deep-rooted problems." He turned to the principal, his expression cold. "And you let it happen." The principal opened his mouth, but no words came out. The students, who had once whispered in fear, now spoke freely. "This isn't just about Ihsan," someone said. "How many others has this happened to?" Another voice followed. "What about the kids who didn't have someone powerful to defend them?" Ihsan swallowed hard. The truth was out, but was it enough? Would anything actually change? Then his grandfather stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I expect action to be taken," he said simply. "Not just words." Mr. Osif nodded. "Mr. Rashid is to be dismissed immediately," he said, his tone firm. "And the school administration will undergo a full review." His eyes flickered to the principal. "That includes you." The principal's face crumbled. "Sir, please, You allowed this to happen," Mr. Osif interrupted. "And now you'll answer for it." Ihsan exhaled, the weight on his shoulders lifting slightly. The school had tried to silence him. Instead, it had been forced to face its own truth. But just as relief settled over him, a new thought crept into his mind. Who had leaked the footage? He turned to the girl with the phone. "How did you get those emails?" he asked. She hesitated. "I didn't find them," she admitted. "Someone sent them to me." On frowned. "Who?" She looked uncertain. "I don't know. It was anonymous." A chill ran down his spine. Somewhere in this school, someone had been watching. Someone had been waiting for the right moment to expose everything. And they had chosen today. As the students cheered, as Mr. Rashid was led away in disgrace, as the school's power structure crumbled, Ihsan couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to this story. Because someone had pulled the strings from behind the scenes. And he had no idea who it was. The school courtyard remained in chaos long after Mr. Rashid had been escorted out. The students, once silent observers, were now buzzing with conversation. Some were angry, others relieved, but all of them had one thing in common. They had just witnessed something that had never happened before. A teacher, someone in power, had been held accountable in front of everyone. Ihsan stood still, absorbing everything. His grandfather had said very little since Mr. Osif took control of the situation, but his presence alone had made all the difference. Without him, none of this would have happened. Ihsan glanced at his father, who gave him a small nod of approval. The principal tried to regain some authority, clearing his throat as he addressed the students. "Return to your classrooms," he ordered, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "This situation is under control." But no one moved. The students looked at Ihsan instead, waiting to see what he would do. That realization sent a new kind of responsibility washing over him. For so long he had thought of himself as just one student, someone struggling to prove that he belonged. But now he saw it. His fight had never been just his own. He took a step forward, locking eyes with the principal. "You didn't listen to me when I first spoke up," Ihsan said, his voice steady. "And if I hadn't had proof, you never would have." The principal flinched but said nothing. Ihsan continued, louder this time so everyone could hear. "Students shouldn't have to fight this hard just to be treated fairly. This school belongs to all of us, not just the ones you think deserve to be here." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Mr. Osif, who had been watching with a calculating gaze, nodded slightly. "He's right," he said. "Things need to change." He then turned to Malik Saeed. "And I assume you'll make sure that happens." Ihsan's grandfather met his gaze without hesitation. "I will." That seemed to settle it. Mr. Osif exchanged a few words with the principal before stepping away. his sleek car waiting for him. Before getting in, he glanced once more at Ehsan. "You're braver than most adults I know," he said simply. "Use it wisely." Ehsan didn't know how to respond, so he just nodded. As the car disappeared through the school gates, the crowd slowly began to disperse. Teachers whispered amongst themselves, students exchanged excited conversations, and the principal retreated toward his office, his head low. But just as things seemed to be settling down, Ehsan turned to the girl who had received the emails. "You said the proof was sent to you anonymously," he said. "Did you ever try to find out who it was?" She shook her head. "I assumed it was someone in the school. Maybe another teacher who wanted to expose the truth but was too scared to do it openly." That made sense. But something still didn't sit right with Ehsan. If a teacher had been behind it, why hadn't they come forward now that the truth was out? Why stay hidden? As he was thinking, a familiar voice spoke from behind him. "You did well today." Ehsan turned sharply. It was the old school janitor, Baba Karim. He had worked here for years, always in the background, sweeping floors, fixing broken furniture, moving unnoticed by most students. Ehsan had seen him 100 times but had never really spoken to him. "Thank you," Ehsan said, confused. "Were you watching?" Baba Karim smiled, his wrinkled face kind. "Of course. I see everything." Something about the way he said it made Ehsan pause. A sudden realization hit him. The janitor was everywhere. In the hallways, near the staff room, around the security office. If anyone had access to all the secrets of this school, it was him. Ehsan's heart raced. "It was you," he whispered. "You sent the proof." The old man chuckled but didn't confirm or deny it. "The truth has a way of finding its way out," he said. "All it needs is someone brave enough to stand up for it." Ehsan stared at him, piecing everything together. Maybe Baba Karim had spent years watching students like him struggle, unable to do anything about it, until now. Until he found someone who wouldn't back down. The old janitor patted Ehsan's shoulder. "You remind me of your grandfather," he said. "And that's a good thing." Ehsan's chest swelled with pride. Baba Karim gave him one last knowing look before walking away, disappearing into the school building like he had never been there at all. Ehsan turned back to his grandfather, who had been waiting patiently. "Time to go home," Malik Saeed said. Ehsan nodded. He had come to school that morning as just another student, fighting for a chance. But he was leaving as something more. As he walked toward the school gates with his father and grandfather by his side, he realized that this wasn't the end of his journey. It was just the beginning.